What's going on, everybody? It is Brian Furness here with Diesel and Iron live at ConExpo 2023. Right next to me,
Rick Valco with Diesel and Iron, still at ConExpo. And next to myself is
Gene Jensen, Chevron Lubricants. Nice
thanks,
to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Gene.
Glad.
Appreciate it. So before we get into it, this is our first time going live from ConExpo on the channel today. Can you give everyone just an idea? What's going on? What's exciting? What are they missing?
Well, it's huge. I don't know if you know about ConExpo, but they have it here once every 3 years, and there's everybody and everything going on. It takes over the whole convention center, and I don't think there are very many that do that. It's absolutely huge, but everything here, heavy duty. Your subscribers here, this is all these OEMs, manufacturers. This would be where they would come. This is the holy grail.
It really is.
What's going on right now?
So, personal opinion, what stands out to you the most here?
Changes. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of talk about changes, especially electrification, different kinds of fuels. We're seeing a lot of that. There's a lot of discussion about how sustainable that is. Can we do it? Can we pull it off? There seems to be a lot going on with electrification.
It does feel like we are in a place of change as an industry, that where it's really coming to a head. We've been talking about it for a number of years now. We've all kind of seen the writing on the wall, but I will say one thing that's really stuck out so far to me is it feels like change is here. It's at the doorstep.
Leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
It is, and even Chevron, we're spending a lot more time on renewable sustainability, those sort of things. Those are very big words within our corporation. So, trying to see how we can migrate that way. So, there's a lot of change in there for sure.
Well, that's a perfect segue. What do you do at Chevron?
So, I'm a trainer. I travel. Most of the time it's in the Western United States and Western Canada. And I train our new salespeople, I train our marketers, salespeople, and I train our customers on how best to use our lubricants so that they can get more life, better performance, lower their costs, those sort of things in their equipment.
So when we talk about extending the life of a lubricant, most of my audience is going to be your small owner operators that we're really in this mentality that, hey, I've used this jug of oil because that's what goes in heavy equipment, and you change the oil every 500 or whatever hours because that's the way you do it. Tell us how that's been changing over the years and how you should think.
So longevity is a big thing. You mentioned 500-hour oil drains. That's very common these days. Now, I'm out in the field a lot, and we still see 150, 200, 250 hours, and 500 is becoming very common. The oils are better, the machines are better, but one of the big things that you really need to look at when you look at is oil analysis. Is taking a look. It's like when you go to the doctor, what's the first thing they do? They take your blood, and just to see how you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're doing poorly, then the blood test tells you. It's exactly what happens. And so even small folks, you mentioned that most of your customers are smaller operators. There's avenues for you to do oil analysis to see how things are going. And one of the other things I'll speak to on that is that most customers are not using their oil to its full extent. Now, you mentioned 500 hours. That's becoming very common. 750 up to 1,000 up to 1,200 hours we're seeing.
Wow.
So you've got to have good air intake. If you're sucking dirt, you may not be able to do 1 hour.
Yeah.
But use oil analysis as a tool to see how things are going. It's going to be a precursor. It's going to tell you what's happening with your equipment. Are you losing this? Are you losing that by whatever metal's happening there? But you may be throwing away your oil way too soon.
So how simple is an oil analysis? What would the actual customer be doing?
So an oil analysis, most customers do them right, when they're doing their oil change.
Okay.
So
That's where you pull that dipstick out and you look at it and you go, got a little bit left.
You squeeze it back into the syringe.
That's right.
There's a lot of that. Or there's a stream coming down, right?
Yeah.
There's a stream coming down, and they take a little bottle and put it right in there. We want to take a sample out of the middle of the middle of the middle. That's what I coach people to do. And you want to do it, if you're draining at 500, you probably want to do it at 250. and then look at it at 500 as well, so that you're getting the trend. And you know, you want to be as clean as possible. One of the things when we're really trying to get a clean oil sample, we rinse that bottle 2 or 3 times because we're trying to get all the dust and dirt. Every bottle, even if it's sealed, they're just not clean. And so we don't want to send a sample in and get false results. Not most of the time, but a good share of the time when we get an oil analysis back and it's bad, it's because they took a bad oil sample. You know, I remember one time a guy called me and he said, "Gene, your oil sampling is awful." And I said, "Really, why?" And he said, "Pass, fail, pass, fail, pass, fail." And I looked at it and we looked, and it so happened that the person that pulled the sample's name was on the sample. You know what it was? Joe Fred, Joe Fred, Joe Fred. Joe knew how to take a sample. Fred did not know how to take a sample. So those are some things to look at. And then the other thought that I had to your question is never react to one oil analysis. If you get a bad one, send it in again immediately and see if it's really happening. Because mostly it's a trend. In other words, it's not something that just happens. There are catastrophic events, that's for sure. But most of the time, when you're doing oil analysis, you see it coming for sometimes thousands of hours. You see it coming for thousands of hours before it actually goes south on you. So those are some.
So with that being said,
Wow.
oil analysis,
Oh, yeah, I was going to say something, but you know.
what are you actually looking for?
Well,
and what can you tell?
Well, oil analysis, you guys, can you get along?
We'll make it work. We're
We'll
good.
make it work. All right.
You know,
I should be sitting between the two of you, maybe, but
They
I'm not.
rearranged us. We were causing problems.
Yeah. But what we're looking for is trends, things that change, like iron. You know, we're looking at the additives. What are they? You know, we're looking at contaminants. We're looking at the wear metals, and we're looking at the additives. We're trying to see what it is. What's the viscosity doing? Is it getting choked down with soot? You know, are the wear metals like like copper and iron? Are they going up? Are they within range, or are they not within range for the amount of hours? But it tells you what's coming if you use it as a tool. It's just, I can't stress that enough.
so top end, bottom end. You know, it's a podcast. So you could tell, like in a motor, whether it's like a piston or a ring.
Absolutely.
Where
From the
possibly it's
type
coming
of metals
from.
you're seeing.
I say absolutely. I mean, based on what metals is increasing, like in the wear metals, you know that that's a piston, or if it's a cam lobe, or
Interesting.
something else that's going on. You absolutely know that. You know, you're seeing. You can identify it down to 2 or 3 things typically. It gives you an idea of what's going on.
So here's the real question that all of the audience is asking. How expensive am I really looking to get into oil analysis? Because my mind goes to, that's really expensive to get that protocol in place and to figure out how I'm going to do this and then to send it off and get it analyzed. If I only run a skid steer, I don't need to do that.
Yeah, and I would say Brian, you need to rethink that. Okay, you're doing it wrong. Nothing could be wronger.
Perfect.
Okay.
You sound like one of the comments on my YouTube videos.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Nothing could be wrong there. But no, it doesn't cost much. I mean, depending on what test you have run, I mean, they're in the $15 to $30 range, depending on how many that you're running and where you're sending it to. But it's just, if I had to say there's one tool out there that can really help you understand the health of your equipment, think about it. I mean, how much, what part of your assets are in your equipment? Most.
Yeah.
A lot.
Right?
Yeah.
Most of
Absolutely.
it. And so here you are, you're flying through there, and you have no idea of the health of that. And if you can avoid, you got a cam going out, you got whatever, you got something going out. If you can avoid that, because what happens when it goes bad, the whole thing nukes.
Yeah.
Right? And then they always come to me and they say, "Hey, Gene, man, like, what happened here?" I go, "What good is that?"
No one could have ever seen this coming.
Yeah.
Grenaded, huh?
It totally blew up. And can you tell me what happened? What good is that? You've got to replace it. You've got to rebuild it.
Yeah.
What you wanted to do was go in proactively and say, you know what? I'm getting to the point where I really need to I'll just tear this apart because it's going to cost me a lot less money to do it now than it's going to cost me later.
So, being a trainer,
Yes.
what has been some of the most eye-opening experiences you've engaged with the customers?
They don't treat their lubricants. It's always going to be from a lubricant standpoint, right? Because
Correct.
when I go in a place, one of the things we do, we call the best-in-class assessment. We go in, and I say, show me everywhere that lubricants are. Show me where you receive them, where you throw them away, where you store them, how you get them, how you put them in your equipment. Show me your storage truck and all that. And almost every one of those, they're treating it poorly at best. They're letting atmosphere, what's in the atmosphere, humidity and particulate matter, what destroys equipment, humidity and particulate matter. There's the old story that I got was I was actually in a mine, right? and one of the mechanics came up and said, where's the drop can? And I said, excuse me, the drop can? They had one, okay? And so they're putting 5 or 6 different fluids in a drop can that is open to the environment, had no lid whatsoever.
What's wrong with that?
Well, everything's wrong with that.
I mean, the coolant and the oil just kind of blend together.
And funny you say coolant, because the next guy came in and he says, hey, I need to put some coolant in. Where's that can? I'm going like, are you kidding me?
So this is the can they were using to put new fluids in the machines?
Brand new fluid. They were topping off. Engine oil, hydraulic oil, transmission, final drive.
Oh, man. The way you worded that the first time, I thought this was the old oil and they were just putting it in.
No. This is them bringing in brand new oil, topping things off, doing so the things come in. It needs a little more hydraulic oil or it needs the engine oil topped off. We'll just use that can. And so they had one. I mean, you asked me for an experience. That's what comes to mind. The point being is they you should treat oil. Going back to going to the doctor, right, and getting a blood drawn. How do they treat that? They come in. They've got gloves on, and they've got a mask on, and they've got alcohol and white cotton, and they're wiping things down, and they're taking stuff out of sterilized plastic. If we just used a little bit of that mentality when we're dealing with our lubricants, because guess what, where that's going? That's going in sometimes a multi-million-dollar machine.
Absolutely.
Well, hang on, Gene. I'm going to hit you with some different logic.
Okay.
Sometimes I pour my cocktail and it's a little too strong. And so what I got to do is I got to bring out the soda water and I just got to water it down a little more. So you're saying I can't take my little catch jug that you're talking about and I can't just run a little extra oil in there to dilute down the coolant that was in there and it's all right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying, Brian. Thanks, thanks for that. But again, to the word of the day, nothing could be wrong or with doing that.
So speaking to a contractor, what would be good practice in your idea world for lubricants, oil, coolant? How should they store it? How should they take care of everything like that?
So when I go into a place and I'm trying to clean them up, right? I'm trying to have their oil dispensed, and the first thing I do is I look at the storage tank, okay? And you got to deal with the vent. The vent needs to have a desiccant breather on it, because if it's just open to atmosphere, I mean, every contractor works in what? Dirt.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that humidity's getting in, that dirt's getting in there. So you look at the vent and you get a desiccant breather on there. If you don't know what a desiccant breather is, it filters out the particulate matter, the dust, and it filters out the humidity. Okay. So that's number one. Then number two is you go and you look at the fill. You go into somebody, contractor, and they've got a tank and there's, 500 gallons of 1540 motor oil in this thing, right? And they've got a nice flop lid so that they can make a nice delivery. Guess how that lid is? It's flopped open. It's open to atmosphere, and whatever's raining down that day, whatever's coming down, it's getting in that oil. So you got to deal with the fill. And what do? You cover that up. You put a cam lock, a camva lock, a ball valve, whatever, some kind of a deal on there. So you still got to hook up there to make the delivery, but you want it to breathe out of that vent that is filtering the air. So those are the first two things. I've got one more thing as a beginner to answer your question. The third thing is to deal with your dispensing equipment. We kind of alluded to that a minute ago, but to deal with your dispensing equipment, you should have one per product type, okay? You don't want to mix engine oil and hydraulic oil. They're both brown. Hey, shouldn't be any big deal,
They
right?
both have oil in the name.
They both have oil in the name. But there are additives in that engine oil, detergent specifically, the magnesium and the calcium, You get that in hydraulic oil, it causes the hydraulic oil to emulsify. The water, the humidity that's out there will emulsify in that water, and you don't want that. You want that water to drop to the bottom so that you can decant it off. And so, we want to look at the delivery equipment, and if you can avoid atmosphere, the best is to have some kind of a hose on there with a cap on it, so when you do on there, it doesn't see atmosphere. That's ideal.
Interesting.
That is so not industry practice currently.
It's so not, but it so should be.
Yeah.
As a statistic, I can't even say the word.
Statistically,
There we go. My tongue is tied here. But if we could get that oil to the machine at the cleanliness level that, for example, Caterpillar wants, on the average, that machine would that component, that hydraulic system, that transmission, that drop box, that final drive, whatever you're talking about in there would last 4 times longer. Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 2, but almost always, based by the time we get it there, our oil is killing that thing 4 times faster than it should.
So I'm going to attempt to sum up everything we just talked about. So first of all, even as a small business that owns a skid steer, a mini excavator, oil analysis should be a part of your standard machine care, because it's going to give you far more information on how much life you have left in your lubricant than any other indicator you have available to you. And then the reason we're doing this is because ultimately it's going to end with me getting an extended drain interval, so I'm not spending as much money on my lubricants because I can go further with the lubricant I'm using currently before I have to do another change.
And you might be saving yourself a boatload of money
From not grenading my engine.
catching the problem before through oil analysis, catching the problem before it goes kaput.
And then to go to the last part there that we talked about, if you do a proper job of caring for, storing, and transferring your fluids, that will actually extend your drain interval even further and allow your equipment life to go longer because you're not getting the contaminants in that are screwing up your engine. Did I get all that correct?
You're doing better.
Man, I feel like I've
You
gotten
were-
a good
you were
education
a little bit
here.
sideways earlier, but you're trainable.
Yeah, once I dropped the liquor references,
you two are you two are somewhat trainable. Okay.
Somewhat trainable.
Somewhat trainable.
Well,
That's fantastic.
That's a good piece right there. Now, as everything keeps evolving, obviously, all the engine manufacturers, we were just touching earlier today on natural gas. What concerns the industry is, we're pushing electronics, we're pushing battery, we're starting to get away from diesel. How do you ease the customer going, look, the change is inevitable, it's going to embrace itself? How do you ease into it going, you need to start looking elsewhere for clean energy, whether it's natural gas?
That's a big subject. Okay, and so this is going to be my personal opinion.
That's
Yes,
all we're asking
yeah.
Because first of all, I believe that electrification is going to continue.
Sure.
I believe that in the smaller, lower horsepower applications, there's a lot more possibility. I mean, you look at lithium. I mean, we use lithium in some of our products. And you look at lithium, and it's in short supply. The price has doubled or tripled in the last year.
Yeah.
Who knows when we're not, who knows where we're headed with that. But in the lower horsepower, and in the automotive world too, I know that's not what this is about, but, commuting to work, that sort of thing. But in my estimation, the big heavy duty stuff, the high horsepower stuff, there's just no replacement for diesel. Now,
Yeah.
I will say this about diesel is that, and one of the things that you'll see out there being worked on is renewable diesel. In other words, diesel from other sources. And, whether or not that's there's all kinds of debate on all this stuff, like what's renewable and what's not, and what's sustainable and what's not. But in the big world, when you're moving, when you got a 777 hauling 100 tons of coal or dirt or, whatever, or you've got an excavator out there moving who knows what, I just don't see, it takes so long. the technology may evolve. You asked my opinion, right? So
Yeah,
I'm still-
absolutely. No, this
I'm
is
still
just us
on my opinion,
spitballing.
but the
Yeah.
technology is just not there for the big horsepower. That's where I.
We
think
don't
we're-
have enough 9-volt batteries to duct tape to that 777 to really make her go.
Yeah, I think exactly right. But in the lower horsepower stuff, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And that's since we're talking
that's
opinions now, we're kind of going down this road. That's exactly the way I kind of see this rolling out. Is your smaller equipment is going to be able to take advantage of this technology a lot sooner because you don't have the power demands that you do of the larger equipment. And with where our current battery technology is, we aren't there. You're not to a point where you can feasibly run some of these machines for more than 4 to 5 hours at a time. And so in this interim, that's kind of the interesting thing that we're seeing here is in the interim, we have to figure out how we're going to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And these renewable fuels, it's been exciting for me to see how you guys as lubricant and fuel suppliers are starting to have to think outside the box and how are we going to address this and what is the angle that we take and how do we do this in a way that's going to be beneficial for the industry, not just convenient for us. It's been really interesting to see all of this kind of play out.
Absolutely.
If you came by our booth that we're broadcasting out of right now, you'll see lower carbon talked about in our booth here, and we're trying to figure out ways to make that. But anyway, the short answer to my question is the smaller stuff, electrification, the bigger stuff, I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Well,
Perfect.
I feel like that's a perfect outro because you just talked about the Chevron booth. And if you are at ConExpo, come see us at the Chevron booth. We are in the South Hall on the second story, broadcasting live here from the Chevron booth. Thanks for watching, everybody. And we'll catch you guys tomorrow. Make sure you show up. We're going to be live at the exact same time, at 3 p.m. What time zone are we in? We're not at
Who
home.
knows?
We're in the Pacific.
Pacific time zone. There we go. 3 p.m. Pacific. Be sure to be here. We'll catch you guys later.
Thanks, guys.